Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So 20%,
Yeah.
almost 15.
For 12 years. That makes sense. Yeah. It was pretty big. Pretty big.
All right, I guess it's
Next week's agenda?
5:15, so Councilmember Navarra Gomez is running up here. Councilmember Cuevas and Harold, this is getting recorded, and they are going to be watching it tomorrow, and then they will be issuing me any questions to forward on to our staff after our presentation. So I think at this point, I sit back and eat popcorn and enjoy the show. So who's up? All right.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, our workshop is on the comprehensive plan update. So we have been working as staff with our consultants and internally, all the departments together, as we have been doing outreach, as we've been learning about the challenges that our community is facing and planning for those needs. And so tonight is really an opportunity for us to report back to you some of the things that we have learned, how that applies to the statutory requirements that the state of Washington has placed on us, and then things that we are doing and things that, some recommendations for you to consider tonight. So with the Growth Management Act, this is our periodic update. So every 10 years, we're required to review our comprehensive plan. And with that, we review the projected or forecasted population change between the start of the plan and the end of the plan, so the 20-year period. So we are projecting, the state is projected, and we divide it up through our conversations, our agreements with the county, planning for about 8,200 new residents within the urban growth boundary. So it's about a 20% increase of where we are today into 2046. So when we look at the population forecast, we also look at, okay, what are the associated housing needs for that? And when we project out the number of houses needed minus the number of units that we already have permits for, we're planning for about 4,500 new dwelling units within the urban area. And so when we have the population, we have the forecasted number of housing units, we make sure that we have capacity within our urban area to do that. So we did a statistical analysis of the urban area. So Matt spent a lot of time looking at maps, looking at parcel data, looking at a lot of information, identifying vacant properties, properties that could be redeveloped, those that are already developed, and then identifying, do we have capacity, do we have enough land in the urban area to meet the housing demand for the future for this plan? Fortunately for us, we do. So the results of that is we don't have to look at expanding the urban growth boundary or anything like that. But it doesn't mean that we don't need to make some changes or change how we're moving forward. So some of the results of that land capacity analysis are, a lot of the larger pieces of property, flatter pieces of property over the years have been consumed with development. That doesn't mean that there aren't properties available that, that aren't vacant or underutilized. It just means that they might be a little more difficult or challenging to divide or to build housing on. And so we are looking at, okay, so how do we meaningfully accommodate growth? We're also looking at jobs. So we need to make sure that the people who are going to move here have a job. So we look at our industrial land, we look at our commercial land, we look at opportunities within like our neighborhood commercials or home businesses, and project out, again, based off of statistical analysis, about how many jobs are we going to be creating with the land that we have available or designated as commercial. So that's about 4,800 jobs over the next 20 years that need to be created in the valley. So those aren't jobs that the city is going to create. We are providing the opportunity. So just like with zoning, we provide the opportunity for housing and the tools to accomplish that. and then allow the market and our partnerships with other agencies to create them. We are required to plan for climate change and climate resiliency. We need to look at how we are growing, how we are implementing our capital facilities planning, and to make sure that we are planning to be resilient to the changing in climate, to wildfires, associated smoke, drought. And so that's a part of this update. We'll include a variety of goals and policies throughout the plan. And what I've learned through this process is that the city is already doing a lot of great work as it relates to resiliency to these climate effects. And so we're ahead of the game on that topic. With the projected growth of housing and jobs, we need to make sure that we have the infrastructure within our community to accommodate that. So we are looking, and we'll talk tonight about parks, making sure that our park system is planned for to accommodate the growth, that our utility systems have sufficient capacity within those systems to accommodate the growth, and that we're planning for where growth is, where we think it's going to occur, and to ensure that the infrastructure in those areas is ready or adequate for that growth. We're required to identify barriers that would prohibit or make it more difficult to build housing more affordably in our community, and then adopt meaningful approaches to do that. And so later in my presentation, we'll talk about what some of those options are for you to consider and to give us and the Planning Commission feedback so that we can vet those with more specificity and bring back recommendations to you in a complete plan. We're also required to coordinate all these efforts with our with the tribes, and so we're working towards that as well. So we have been working since the beginning of last year to do all of this, and we are currently in phase 3, which is we're drafting the comprehensive plan elements. We have a draft environmental impact statement that will go out in a couple of weeks. We'll be holding an open house in May where we will have those draft documents ready for public review. We'll be continuing to go out and talk to folks and continue to meet with you and the Planning Commission as we work through each of those. At this point, I'm going to step aside and let Dave from Parks is going to do his presentation, and then I'm going to come back and pick up the conversation of housing and other related issues.
Thanks, Steve.
You bet.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So we're fortunate that we have an adopted standalone plan, Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. It's 253 pages. I thought we'd go through all the pages tonight. We've got a couple hours, so should
Lots
be
of pictures?
piece of cake. Lots of pictures, yep, for sure. That was adopted in 2023. And so we're about, at the end of the year, we'll be about halfway through it. So we're able to then just incorporate a lot of that information that we've already done into this comprehensive planning process. Before we kind of jump into a couple of the high-level pieces on those chapters, we're gonna talk about those bottom 4 here in a little bit. We want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we face right now. A few of them: aging infrastructure. We've done a pretty good job over the last number of years of doing updates to a variety of the different park areas. We still have electrical issues in a number of the parks that have to be upgraded to code. ADA accessibility, we've been doing that in all the parks as well. Pioneer just last year, but that's another area of emphasis. And our urban forest. You've seen a lot of even the downtown street trees are starting to kind of show their age. The other thing that we're looking at as far as that goes is the climate change and resiliency. Some of the trees that are maybe planted now may not survive in 20 years if the weather keeps changing. So we're looking at different species to try to address that. Capacity issues. So our current parks are being loved to death. As the population continues to grow, that's going to continue to be an issue. And so we need to continue to acquire and develop park areas to address those needs of the growing community. Misuse and safety. course, safety is the number one issue for us, but misuse of the parks, pretty well documented, costs anywhere from $150,000 a year to about $200,000 a year to address vandalism and other nefarious acts that happen in those parks. And then funding. So, as things are getting more expensive. Council's been super supportive of what we've been trying to do over the years to keep these things up to code and improved over the years. We've been really lucky with grants. But there might come a time where we have to do a trade-off on priorities. And we'll cover that here a little bit. So, we may only have a certain amount of money and we have all these facilities we have to maintain. What are the priorities? Are we going to maintain the streetscape down Wenatchee Avenue, or are we going to maintain Lincoln Park, for example? But jumping into our pros plan and jumping ahead to chapter 4. So this chapter really talks about our assessment process. So we looked at a variety of recently adopted plans when we developed this, and had a year's worth of meetings and surveys and did polls and trend analysis of what's happening out there, boiled all that down into kind of the next section, which is the goals and objectives. But we did take a look at level of service and areas of deficiency. So the map on the left, that's our community parks. So all the parks are classified by type and size and things like that. So community parks, I just put a couple of them up there for you. The areas in purple, it has a dot in the middle. That's not where the park would go. A park would have to go somewhere within that purple shaded area sometime in the future to address community park needs. Same thing on the neighborhood park needs. Those are the littler ones. That's that middle map. You should be able to have a neighborhood park in each one of your communities, so you don't have to cross an arterial to get to. So mom and dad can let their kids out, hey, walk over to the park, and they can get to it without crossing Chelan Avenue, for example, something like that. And then it goes all the way down into specific facilities. That's the table on the right-hand side. So numbers of various types of facilities that would be contained within those parks to meet the growing demand as we move on into the future. So you can see the 2030 need on each of those, and then the difference that we need to address. Moving ahead to chapter 5, that's our goals and objectives. We call it the guiding framework. So it's goals, objectives, and strategic actions. And so those goals are in five goal areas. This talks about climate resiliency, forestry, all that good stuff that Stephen mentioned is included in there. Forestry is in there as well. But broken out into those 5 areas. Within those 5 areas, we have 24 objectives within each one. And then within those 24 objectives, there's 178 specific strategic actions to accomplish those goals and objectives. And so those are the steps. And that could be anything like doing ADA accessibility at Pioneer Park, to the electrical and Memorial Park, to we need more picnic shelters or tables. And then finally in chapter 6, so this includes our capital investment plan, our capital plan. So all the projects, all 54 projects that are within the capital plan have been rated on each one of those criteria that you see there. So those criteria came about through the public input process, and those were the priorities that the community had. So health, safety, welfare in the park, that was kind of their number one priority, so that got a weight to it. So each project was scored and weighted based on those things to determine the actual list of priorities for our park projects. There they are. And so I'm sure you can read every single one of those. So in this table that you can't read, you've got a priority listing of the parks. So there you can see if you can see it, the very top one at that time was Riverfront Park, which has kind of been accomplished at this point. The middle columns, kind of the little darker shade of whatever color that is, those are those priority criteria rankings. So each one had one. And then on the far right, those are the projected years at that time, assuming best case scenario, there's Brad's printing money for us. That's the years that we would try to get those projects done. And some of those are grant projects. Doesn't mean that we can't do a project, say that's ranked number 8 or 9, before you do project ranked number 1 or 2. if funding comes available for one of those lower projects, then that bumps up the list. That's kind of how that works. But it at least gives us kind of a roadmap of things that we want to try to accomplish. And then also beyond the project cost. So that's just dealing strictly with kind of park stuff. So we also have maintenance and operation to consider. So we have formulas in there for maintaining and operating these parks based on just kind of the traditional park space that you would see. Granted, some things take more maintenance than others. A splash pad takes more maintenance than an open field. So there's some, factors that we do take a look at. Again, I mentioned kind of deciding on priorities. We also have in this chapter the 6-year art fund. So the art fund has a separate budget. And so we list out on a 6-year program that's rotating every year, the various priorities of those projects. And then also recreation. So we have recreation goals in there so we can look at the various needs that come up. Who would have thought pickleball would be, when I was playing back in 1978, it was a little program. It's a little different now. And so, trying to project that as the community desires change. So we include that as well in there as part of the things. Taking a look at how do we address some of this from a funding standpoint. So all of those items that are in black on your screen are things that we already do. So we take advantage of all those various things. The things that are in kind of the orange color are things that we haven't taken advantage of yet. Some of them, like Metropolitan Park District, we did some polling a couple of times. We did a conservation finance study twice over the last 5 to 10 years. The ballot measure polling did terribly, and so it did so bad that the group that we did it with said, yeah, we wouldn't even touch a ballot measure on this because it would fail miserably if it was brought out. So what we did find, people love the parks, they love going to them, they want to have them, they just don't want to be taxed again for them. Another one up there that's kind of stands out is impact fees. We have no development impact fees for parks. I've had those in a number of other communities that we worked at, or dedication requirements. So big new housing development comes in, other places I've worked, we said, okay, well, depending on how many units you're putting in, you have to build and dedicate a park for the park system, then we take it on. So it was a good way to get a park system developed. But things like sales, cemetery operates a lot on sales, mostly on sales. And then I've already mentioned grants and donations, partnerships. We do a lot with our partners on things to provide a variety of different things. And this moves it, that's the end of me, so this moves it back to somebody else. But do you have any questions on the park stuff? Like I say, if you want to see the comp plan, the park comp plan, it's on the website. In our plans and documents section on our page. It's got all those details in there. All the capital plans are broken out. Each one has its own, capital projects has its own sheet with more details on it and all that, so.
This is a very random question, but in your spreadsheet, you had the levels, you had an unidentified. Can you elaborate on what that was?
Yeah, a lot of unidentified areas to acquire property for future parks, because we don't know, if a property comes up, say there's a big code enforcement case on multiple houses, and they have to tear them down and abate them, sometimes that
that's
might turn into a park.
Okay, thank
So
you.
sometimes we don't know where those opportunities are gonna exist, so we always wanna have something in there, so if it does pop up, we can take advantage of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? All right, back on to whoever's next.
Back to me. So before I keep going, I wanted to just loop back to our outreach process. We met with the junior city council a couple weeks ago, and we asked them some of the very same questions that we asked the city council and the community about what they love, what they're concerned about, and things like that, right, their hopes are. And it was very interesting to hear the junior city council, their responses were very similar to what you as a city council, your responses were in the community at large, right? Concerns about, or hopes, or let's see, they loved the outdoors, right? And I think as Dave presented, right, people love our parks. That was, uniform across all of our polling. Concerns, homelessness, housing affordability, right? Those ranked high among our junior city council, among the community. Yesterday, I spent the day at the high school presenting this comprehensive plan process to the AP Human Geography classes, and we polled them as well. And guess what? Their responses were just the same as their cohort from the junior city council, the city council, and the community at large, right? Love the outdoors, love our community, love the small town feel, want homes to be affordable, want this to be a place that they can come back to. And so as we are planning for this 20-year comprehensive plan update, those are our guiding, responses from the community. And every time we ask the same questions, we get the same responses. So we know we're headed in the right direction. And so it's how do we get there? How do we accomplish this? How do we plan for the future to have a community that our kids want to come back to? Over and over, we talked yesterday about, we're planning today for a community that we hope our kids will move back to, that the students that I talked to yesterday, if they go away to college or go away for a job, that they want to come back to, raise their kids here. And so that's really kind of the overarching story that we're here to talk about is how do we address these really difficult problems of housing affordability, making sure that we have sufficient parks and utilities and street infrastructure so that we can grow in a way that we want to. So as a part of this, we look at the number of people that are coming, and then this go around, this periodic update, all of that growth is then divided into income brackets. We used a tool that the state of Washington put together. It's called the Housing for All tool. And so that divided up our projected housing needs into all these different categories. So permanent supportive housing, non-permanent supportive housing, and then income brackets based off the area median income and emergency housing. And so as we've done analysis of that, what we found is we have a surplus right now, and for the plan, lifetime of the plan, for that 80 to 120% of our area median income and for emergency housing beds. We have a deficit for everything else. So for over 120% area median income, but when we look at this, we're planning for about 3,340 housing units for individuals and households in our community that earn less than 80% of the area median income. So that's almost always that subsidized housing in some form or fashion. And so when we kind of extrapolate that out at a rate of $300,000 per dwelling unit, that's over $1 billion of investment to accomplish that. To put that into a little bit of context, in the last 9 years that I've been here at the city, we have put online less than 100 dwelling units specifically dedicated to that less than 80% area median income population. So it's almost impossible, right? And we've conveyed that as much as we can, but we have to plan for that, right? That's our obligation. So we have to identify what are the barriers in our zoning code and our other codes that we can look at to find ways that this would be possible. To put this into a little more context, so that's about 240 dwelling units a year that need to be finalized and ready for occupancy. We've got about a 115 unit gap right now. So we're not producing enough units today to accommodate the projected growth of our plan. So we have to identify ways that we can close that gap. Now, we have a lot of units in process right now, and so maybe 25 looked a little low, 26 we'll do a little better. 27, we're going to see about 500 or more housing units come online as the Majestic, as the Walla Walla Apartments, as the Sagecrest West, right? As some of these bigger projects finish up, we're going to see a huge jump in the number of units that are being put online. And so that's what we're trying to figure out. How do we get to the end? How do we provide housing? How do we provide housing that's affordable for our community? And so one of the things that we look at, well, what have we already done, right? We're not starting from ground zero, right? We've actually been really proactive. And I think first and foremost, I want to say that we have been working together as a city, as departments, as subject matter experts in these fields really well, trying to identify how is it that we can accomplish getting to the end. We can't make zoning changes that don't affect parks, that don't affect utilities, that don't affect street infrastructure, right? So they're all interrelated. And so we have to plan in that coordinated fashion. We've been adjusting and simplifying our zoning code over the years, trying to make it easier. In the 2017 comprehensive plan update, so starting in about 2015, 2016, we started looking at middle housing as an option for the community. In 2019, that was adopted. The council approved funds to make that happen. In 2019, we adopted our first version of that middle housing code, and we've done iterations to that since then. We are about 6 or 7 years ahead of the state as far as mandating middle housing, right? The things that the state is requiring us to do, we already did. And so that was our approaches we're ahead of the game. We already have some affordable housing connection fee reductions in our code. Under certain circumstances, projects that qualify can get a reduction to those connection fees. We've updated our multifamily tax exemption to require affordable units with both the 8 and the 12-year program. And just in the last year, we have 45 committed affordable housing units because of these projects that are going online that are now taking advantage of that tax exemption. And so those are going to be for low and moderate income households locked in for 12 years in exchange for that tax exemption. We partnered with the City of East Wenatchee on the local option affordable housing tax. That's what pays for the homelessness program. And because of that, we now have met our requirements for the emergency shelter standard, right? So a huge benefit to our community there. We adopted accessory dwelling unit standards. We have allowed accessory dwelling units for years within city limits. We are compliant with the state law allowing two accessory dwelling units on a lot. We have completed our pre-approved plans for ADUs and cottages. We did that in conjunction with the City of East Wenatchee. And this year, $1.9 million was awarded to 3 projects through the CHIP grant program. That's going to help alleviate some of the cost for infrastructure improvements. And in exchange, the community gets affordable housing as well. So we're actively working on these issues and have been for a long time. But that doesn't mean that we don't have things that we should consider or changes that we might want to do. And so as we've worked with our consultant team, they've looked at a lot of different options with us. And so tonight I wanted to present some of the key recommendations. Now, some of the recommendations are like adjust the height within a zoning district, or the lot coverage, or look at the setbacks. And those are things that we'll work through with the Planning Commission. These are our broader policy conversations that we want to bring to you. So, for example, the first one, expand our fee exemption for affordable housing projects. So we already have that tool. Our consultant team is recommending that we consider expanding that. Then that may take the form in for a project that's providing 100% of its units for a family or households that make 0 to 50% of our area median income. Maybe we exempt from that the building permit fee. That would be a barrier to helping that project move forward. So something for us to consider. How do we help that? A good example of that is the YWCA. They're one of the CHIP grant recipients. They're working on a project to renovate their property on First Street. And this may be an opportunity where the city can say, okay, you're providing truly affordable housing units to a very disadvantaged population in our community. Because of that, we're going to, if this were approved, we would waive the building permit review fees. They would already have some connection exemptions that they could achieve as well. So something for us to consider, and I'm happy to hear your feedback. This isn't, we're looking for your feedback so that we can take this back to the Planning Commission if these are ideas that you want us to consider more fully. The consultants have recommended that we remove the density in our residential high zoning district. So we allow 40 dwelling units to the acre, and they're recommending that we just remove that completely. And similar to our waterfront mixed use, our other mixed use districts, our commercial zones, they don't have a maximum density. We still would have a maximum height, a maximum lot coverage, setbacks, open space, and things like that. And so there is some form, we have our design standards that would still exist, but this would just take the lid off, so to speak. And with that, something that we're also considering in our environmental impact statement that we want to talk to you about is requiring a minimum density in that zoning, in that residential high zoning district. And so that can take the form, take a variety of different forms. And we've asked our consultants to help us understand what that might look like. So an example would be if I have a 1 acre piece of property, and so under our current zoning, that would allow up to or more than 40 dwelling units on that acre, right? We would say, we expect you to develop, choose a number, 15, 20, 30 units to the acre on that, no less. And so that may take the form of, we need housing in our community. And so if you have a parcel of a certain size, the expectation from the city is that you build that. It may take the shape of, if you have a piece of property and you only really want to put a single family home on that, that's fine, as long as you put it in a place that would allow the property to redevelop at higher densities in the future. So this could take shape in a couple of different ways, and so we're asking for our consultant to give us some option there. But again, something that we want to make sure that we bring to you for your consideration and thoughts that you might have on that as well. City owns property throughout the city. And one of the recommendations is using property that might be surplused for affordable housing. That would be a partnership, for example, that the city would put out a request for a proposal to affordable housing organizations, and they would then bid and put a proposal together to the city to build affordable housing on the surplus property that the city owns. So that would be a partnership, removing costs by having the land provided by the city. We're considering a variety of different zoning changes, expanding some of our residential high zones to provide more opportunity for more intense development. We're considering, is that more intense along arterial corridors and maybe a little less as you get into more of the local access streets? So maybe you get a little bit more height in along the arterials, and then that scales down the further you get from there. Considerations that we're looking at. And then the last one that they recommend, and this is, so I want to be really clear, this is something that we have to do. By 2028, the state of Washington, the legislature passed a bill that says we have to reduce the amount of parking that we can require. And that's going down to half a parking space for a multifamily unit. So right now we require 1 parking stall per bedroom up to a maximum of 2. 1 space for a single-family house, and then there would be no minimum parking required for small homes, so less than 1,200 square feet, or for projects that are providing affordable, like truly affordable housing, the entire project, or for senior housing. And so this is something that we have to do by 2028. And but as we've talked about this internally, it poses a lot of very interesting questions, right? What happens if when we adopt this and the housing developer says, okay, I'm only going to provide half a parking space for my multifamily project. Let's say they have 100 housing units, right? There's going to be a lot of cars that aren't parking on that property. So where are they going to park? They're going to end up parking on our city streets. Well, So what does that mean? What's the obligation of the city then to accommodate that parking? You're going to hear in a little bit about our multimodal level service and how the city is looking at providing multiple ways for people to move around our community, whether it's on bikes, pedestrian, link, transit, or cars. If we put more cars on the street for parking, what does that mean for bike lanes? What does that mean for our pedestrian network? What does that mean to neighborhoods around these larger projects that now all of a sudden, I don't get to park in front of my house anymore? Maybe because the apartment complex is spilled out onto the street, I have to park on the next block over from where I live. Right? These are things that cause us, lots of thought. And so I wanted to put these out to you and hear your thoughts on kind of these recommendations that Burke and that the city staff have put together.
What's that?
You're waiting?
What's that?
You're waiting for our, you're
Yes,
waiting?
I'm done. This is all I got. Sorry, yes. That was a question. We are here to hear your response, and if you want to wait until you hear the whole presentation about utilities and streets, that's also fine, right? I'm happy to defer, and we can come back afterwards for a more informed Q&A.
I like the fee exemption, that first one there. I think I would probably not make it zero, probably, some nominal amount. But I would, if it has to be zero, or I would.
It can take the form of whatever the city decides it should be.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm saying I think that's a great idea, some kind of reduction and close to zero, but maybe not zero.
Yeah.
I would agree with Charlie with the first bullet. I think that's, if we know there's already a deficit in affordable housing, I think this is one way that we can help create a solution for it. I also like the idea of affordable housing on surplus city property. I realize that it's easier said than done, but I think that if there is an opportunity that we can seek that aspect. Looking at the minimum density, I am just by quickly looking at other cities that are similar in size, I wonder about the 40 DU per acre. I guess if it's a multi-family complex, that makes sense, but and I'm guessing that's what you were thinking about, right? Not like just in general residential, you were talking about specifically a multiple family complex. Is that what you were talking about the increase for? Or was it more than 40 for any?
No, that would just be in our residential high zoning district.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Then I could see that happening.
Which is currently, is a maximum density of 40.
Right. Yeah.
Removing a max, I don't know about removing, has anyone come close? I don't know, have there been projects that come close to reaching the maximum density, or?
I think one, and I'm gonna ask Mia, because you worked on Sagecrest West, right? And they are, I think, the only project that was like right at max density, right? Yeah. Yeah, most of our other projects like Majestic and the Walla Walla Apartments, those are in zones that don't have a max density, right? So we can't compare that. But, so the project that's on Maple Street, it's right across from the middle school. And they were like right at their maximum density. It doesn't happen all the time, but.
So I'm just,
So.
yeah, I guess I just question like the benefit of removing a maximum density versus kind of addressing that problem when I don't know. But the minimum density to me makes sense, kind of encouraging a certain number. But I don't know, because I don't know, I'm thinking like how slums, I don't, it's just weird, but I'm just curious. I'll have to do more research, but thank you.
Well, in reality, in order to get above that, you're going higher, because you only have so much room this direction, right?
Right, yeah, so
So-
we have a 60-foot height maximum in our residential high zoning district. And most projects are building up to 4 stories, so little, 40-plus feet. Very few, the first 2 phases of Riverfront Village, those are 5-story buildings. down across from the sewer treatment plant, right? But as you get higher, taller and taller buildings, it changes the construction type in the building code. So it becomes more and more expensive the higher buildings go, which has been an impediment, frankly, to projects reaching those maximum heights.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this the maximum that you were talking about? Didn't we get complaints from the neighbors of how horrible the parking is now?
Yeah.
So if we remove this, it's gonna even increase that issue more. So I don't know how
Potentially, yes.
fundamentally changing neighborhoods, and we also get the other side of that coin of you have to have affordable housing. So they came to City Hall, I believe, 2 or 3 times and spoke to us about the issues that came from that specific project because there was so much more density than they were used to.
Yes, we have some neighbors to the Sagecrest
Yep.
property. They are also zoned high-density residential.
Yep.
We've spoken to folks, and, I think it's a balance that we have to strike in our community, where one property owner has a right to develop their property. Another property owner may choose not to do so. But that does not give them necessarily the right to infringe on their neighbor, to say, I don't want them to build a 5-story building because I want to keep my horses and I like my trees. That's that balance, right? When we apply zoning standards, and when we go through these exercises, right, we are opening up those bundles of rights to property owners to say, here, you don't get to do whatever you want, right? We hear that all the time. I own land, I want to do whatever I want. Okay, well, the construct within which we worked protects property owners, right? Provides them some flexibility, some opportunity, but it also protects property owners to know that I'm not gonna get a sewer treatment plant, well, I shouldn't use that. I'm not gonna get if you're in a residential zone, you're not going to get an industrial manufacturing business next to you, right? That's the protection that you get, but you might get an apartment complex next to you. And, as we balance out our growth as a community, right? These are those really hard questions that you, as the city council, get to weigh in on how do we grow? How do we make this work? And protect people's rights to be able to exercise them.
So kind of finer point of that, I don't think removing the maximum is the right approach, but maybe increasing it some is maybe appropriate. That is kind of looking at the middle ground there. Total removal, I think, would cause us some headaches, so.
Can you explain that minimum density again? You said somebody could build a single-family home, but it couldn't interfere with.
It depends on how we were to structure that, right? So in some forms of a minimum density, it would be based, so you could say on properties over a certain size, right? Let's choose a half an acre, just for example purposes, right? If you own residential high property and you have a half an acre, the expectation of the city is you are going to develop a certain number of housing units, right? You're gonna do at least 20 units, right? And so to get in the door, you have to bring us a project on that half acre that meets that minimum density. That's the floor. You can go higher, right? But that's the floor. Let's say if you have half an acre, it would be 10 units or whatever, right? 15 units. You could build 20 now. The city says, okay, we want you to build at least 10. Right, that's what a minimum density would look like.
Right, but you had mentioned
Or-
somebody could build a single-family home.
Correct. Or there might be a form of this where we say, you can build that lower density, but you have to locate that new structure, new home on the property. You can't put it right in the middle, right?
Yeah.
You can't put it right in front, and so you block access to the back of your property. You have to build that in a place that would allow future access and redevelopment. So it could take a variety of different forms, and that might, that's not necessarily a minimum density. That's more of a shadow platting of, future planning for that. We've had in other jurisdictions, they require the developer to do a utility plan of how are they going to extend sewer back there. You know, there's a lot of different ways to do that, but it's within the toolbox of how do we as the community set the standard of an expectation that if you have what we would consider valuable residential property because of its intensity, we expect you to build at a certain standard, and we get to decide what that is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have the consultants identified properties that were, shall we say, formerly commercial, even perhaps fruit industry, that are under serving our community right now?
Yeah, so actually, Matt, there he is. Matt did all of that analysis for us. So yeah, he looked at all the parcels, both residential and commercial and industrial, and identified those that are underutilized, that could be redeveloped.
Are some of those under ownership of public agencies, for lack of a better description?
Yeah, absolutely, right. The old lineage properties right on Columbia Street, those are owned by the Port District. Right, those are ripe for redevelopment.
Between the south city limits and, say, the George Seller Bridge, have there been properties identified there that seem to be meeting a low-income need, but are also in a condition that's not supportive of those existing 20 years from now? Like roof failing, anything? Do we look at that kind of detail?
No, we don't go into that kind of detail, right? So we set a value of what it's assessed at to help determine if it has redevelopment potential, or anything below that value, then it could be considered as, again, redevelopable or even vacant, or
Okay.
I'm using the wrong terms. Matt would be the right
I mean,
term.
vacant land is easy, sometimes commercial buildings are easy, but I know individual dwellings is more difficult. Earlier on a slide, you had an anticipated 8,000 and change new residents, and approximately 5,000 plus new employer, need for employment. The ratio to me seemed like there was a lot of expectation of people who are going to need employment as opposed to a larger family generating that 8,000 number. Is that a demographic rooted in school district enrollments, or the
Yeah, so school
census
district
tracts
enrollments
or-
are actually going down, right? And so the demographics that we see are, our community has a high percentage, higher than the average, higher than Chelan County as an average, and I think the state, of individuals living alone, right? So that might be single professionals, it might be seniors, right? So we are seeing a demographic shift. And I think as we talk about the issues of affordability, right, two-income households are almost what was required to buy.
four-income households.
Four-income households, right? You gotta have multiple jobs, right? And so that's more individuals entering the workforce. And then again, that's a statistical analysis based off of all kinds of factors that I will be honest, I don't understand. Matt is the mastermind behind that analysis. But there's anyway, so yes, we're forecasting. It seems like a lot. It feels out of proportion. High school students said the exact same thing yesterday. Feels like we're planning for a lot of jobs for the ratio of people. But again, when we look at our demographic shift to some younger professionals, and then multi-job households, I think can be attributed to that.
Because it occurred to me that there are some student age workers right now in this community who are working after school, or perhaps work experience, and instead of being able to use that to take care of a little bit of fun, or maybe go to a movie or something, they're using it because they're paying their insurance.
Yep.
They're paying for their own meals, things
Yeah.
like that, because the household is so caught up in just maintaining the cost of having a home.
Yeah.
And that's just anecdotal, of course.
Absolutely. Well, according to the teenagers, there's nothing for them to do in Wenatchee anyway.
Yes, that is true. It might as
So-
well work.
So they might as well be working.
Thank you.
Put them to good use. So, yeah, great comments, thank you. We'll make some notes. I'm gonna let Emma and Jake and Jessica finish up their projects, and then we can have a much broader understanding of some of the challenges that we face and can bring some of these recommendations into context. So if that's okay with council, I'm gonna turn it over to our transportation road team.
It's tight-lipped.
Does that stress you out a little?
Hello. Oh, there's no notes.
What do you need?
It's okay, we can wing it.
Yeah, I don't know that those copy over. I think that's
Flying
always
cars.
the challenge with,
I'll pull mine up, we'll have it side
that's
by
always
side.
the
Okay.
challenge because you can't see the speaker
That's
notes from this.
I'll pull it up.
Copy.
Sorry.
All right, it's fine.
No, I just pull it right.
We got it. Jake was looking at it earlier, it's fine.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh.
I forgot. I had it a while ago and then I forgot.
We lost one. Okay, we'll just go ahead and get started then.
He's helping us, stall.
So I'll get started while Jake pulls that up. For those of you that don't know me, I don't think I've met you yet, Doug. My name's Emma Honeycutt. I'm the Assistant City Engineer here at the city, and Jake is our city engineer. My role at the city is to, I supervise the development review group for engineering, so they review Jessica's stormwater facilities and road impacts associated with development. And then also I do a lot of the planning for the transportation group in terms of like safety planning and also just like mobility and comprehensive planning. So I'll just kind of dive in and give a brief kind of like overview of how the transportation element is used and what it looks like in our plan. Historically, the transportation element was, when we were a smaller staff, our former city engineer, Gary Owen, had ownership over the element. It was all up to him. He kind of did everything to the best of his ability in the time that he had. And he did a great job for what we had. Since then, since the last periodic update, our city has grown quite a bit. So last year, we came to council and Glenn partnered with us in this to ask for some money to hire a consultant to take a look at the transportation element. And so we've brought Transpo on board to write the transportation element for us and update it and beef it up and put some good intentional thought into it. So that's what we're gonna be kind of presenting to you today, is what they've done. This specific presentation focuses on how we classify the work that we need to do on our transportation as growth happens, and also how we organize and classify our roads and put them into different categories so that we can plan on like a context-sensitive solution as opposed to one size fits all for our roads. And then also what kind of like different requirements we put on different types of roads. And so the transportation element, the intent is for it to plan out for 20 years. We took traffic counts, and so Transpo is looking at our traffic projections. They worked with Matt to ensure that the transportation model is growing in the same place as our city housing and residential model is growing, so that as we use this model to determine where we're gonna need mobility in the future, we have some kind of like level of assurance that it's accurate. And that's important because when we're asking something out of a developer, we want to make sure that we're actually asking something in good faith and something that's gonna be needed, and not just because we're being over conservative or under prepared. Like, as I said, the transportation element also identifies specific routes for freight to get through the city. So we have specific, in addition to roadway classifications, arterials and stuff, we have specific streets that are identified as freight routes, and we have different design requirements on those streets. We also have specific streets that are identified for bike routes, for pedestrian routes, and then, like I said, for cars. And then one of the outputs of this plan is that it will deliver us an itemized long list, similar to the one you saw from Dave, of the needs in the city for mobility, safety, and preservation. So the way that we break up our capital program and our needs in this city is kind of into three categories. You have mobility, which basically means a car can get where it needs to go in a certain amount of time, and our roads can serve all of the vehicles that will be on them. And that they're big enough to serve them to the extent that city council decides they should be served. You have safety, which is pretty self-explanatory. We ensure that we have a target zero policy at the city. You've all seen my wagon wheel. I love that thing. We are committed to 0 serious injury collisions and fatal collisions in the city, and we're actively working to get there with our planning efforts. And then preservation, this is depicting preservation of roads, but also preservation of ITS infrastructure and traffic lights, street lights, stuff like that. So I'll dive a little bit into the functional classification part of our comp plan update. This originally, what kind of started this about 2 years ago was as we were having development come through and put buildings in, we kind of realized we have requirements around driveways, we have different requirements for different classified streets, and too frequently for my liking, we would have to have Jake make a city engineer informed decision about what the driveway situation would look like or what this or that would look like, because the roadway classifications were just a little outdated and growth had happened differently over the past 10, 20 years than when we first classified them. So we brought Transpo on board to take a look at our roadway classifications and right-size them and bring them into industry standards, just so that we can be a little bit more fair and a little bit more realistic. We need, the different classifications of roads vary from a principal arterial, which is the highest traffic volume road, down to what we call a non-classified road. So those are basically the roads on this map that don't have a color on them at all. They are non-classified, and they're your neighborhood streets that are not intended to get anyone who doesn't live on that street anywhere. The intention is that only people that live on that street will use it. The nuance of roadway classifications is sometimes people live, especially the way that Wenatchee's grown over the last half century, sometimes people live on those higher classified streets, specifically like Western, and we try to work with them as much as we can as a city and as like a transportation department. But unfortunately, we do see the higher set speed limits on those roads, and we see the higher traffic volumes, and our transportation system relies on those roads to exist, so that it all does work together. And so, I mean, we have a bunch of empathy for them, and we understand that it's not ideal. Nobody wants to live on a super busy street, and unfortunately, just the reality, and we try to work with them the best we can.
And I think just to add on here, a big point is, again, a lot of the functional classification, just like the speed limits, we've talked about it before, were set, 30, 40 years ago or longer. And now we've seen a lot more development, a lot more infill, more density on some of the collectors feeding into these arterials. And so where a lot of these configurations work, the speeds work, now we're starting to see an uptick in things like safety, congestion, and just like the lack of ability to sort of develop that property. So that's why we're trying to now look at how developments happen and how we're planning for the next 20 years to kind of right size our functional classifications, again, start looking at our speeds and what facilities we're providing.
And so this is just a snapshot of what we had Transpo do. On the left is the existing functional classifications. There's industry standards for how closely different classifications should be spaced, like how closely you want an arterial, how closely you want a collector. So they overlaid that grid onto our city streets just to kind of give us a feel for how close things should be and where we're at. We were pretty close. What we kind of identified is that a couple roads, specifically Western and Orondo, based on their traffic volumes and also the traffic projections 20 years down the road, there's an opportunity to look at how we look at them, and do we need to actually have them be a principal arterial, which is the highest level of road, or can we knock it down to a minor arterial? That might come with a speed limit change, that might come with different requirements for lane widths. It's all stuff that we do this work with keeping in mind what the downstream effects will be, and try to make a good decision. And so we're kind of at this stage now of reorganizing the roads to in a way that makes sense based on data, like based on the volumes we're actually seeing.
And hopefully support the kind of the future goals of the development on the some of those roads too, so.
Right. So the kind of the meat of what we wanted to talk to you guys about is level of service. So level of service, I was trying to describe this to my mother the other day. And a level of service is basically, what degree of service you can expect from your roads or from your bicycle facility or from your sidewalks. So as a city, we set the level of service. We set the quantitative and qualitative measure of what citizens can expect out of their roads. What that means is a level of service is kind of tied for vehicles, it's tied to travel time. So you can set on the left here is kind of a graphic of level of service A to level of service F. That's how you measure vehicle level of service. It is not a report card. That's not how it works anymore. It was at one point, but over the past kind of 30, 40 years, what agencies have learned is that you don't necessarily want to strive for an A because the resources aren't there, and it's also just the trade-offs aren't there. Okay, so digging into vehicle level of service a little bit. Level of services for cars are tied to the Highway Capacity Manual, which is a big book that Jake and I follow. It is based on what's called the peak hour. I just threw the hourly vehicle volumes for Western up here so you guys could kind of see how the traffic ebbs and flows throughout the day. There's a morning peak and then kind of a lunchtime peak, and then the PM peak is the highest peak. So when we talk about level of service and what you can expect for a travel time to get home from work, we're talking about during that peak hour at about 3 to 4 to 5 p.m. Just how it kind of works, if you have a level of service E or D at 5 p.m., based on something like this map at 5 or 6 or 7 a.m., it's probably going to be a B or a C. At lunch, it's going to be a B. And you're only going to hit that high travel delay at the peak hour. So that's the intent of this map. When you have a higher level of service, so an A, B, or C, the benefits are that you have faster trips and you get home to your family sooner, which is wonderful. Other results are that you generally have to add more lanes or more pavement, which kind of ups your pavement preservation costs. It also ups the kind of encumbrance of a roadway facility onto the neighborhoods and the people whose front yards you are kind of sometimes building lanes in. Go ahead.
Yeah, just again, like Emma said, it's not a report card, so an A is not necessarily good. This level of service is really trying to help you assess when we're approaching the capacity of the road. And so really, you're not really hitting the road's full capacity until about levels D to E. F is when you start to see some delays, and again, we measure at the peak hour, and I think really if you look across Wenatchee currently, and even in the 20-year future, that peak hour is pretty short as compared to, you go over maybe to the west side, larger urban areas, we see peak spreading. We're not seeing that here. So during that peak hour, maybe you get stopped at the light, but if you're getting through on the next cycle, it's still operating at capacity. You're not waiting through multiple cycles. So really you want to target a D or an E, again, to find that sort of balance there of utilize the road at its full capacity and not be widening all the roads throughout Wenatchee, which has another impact on, available space for housing.
Mm-hmm. And also a direct effect on safety as well. When you have just kind of that free flow state, you see a direct correlation to serious injury crashes.
So I know it's not a report card, but where are we falling right now if we look at this graph?
That's a good question. So currently, most of our roads are operating at a B to a C.
Western specifically, because it has specific numbers.
Western specifically, at peak hour in the morning, we haven't analyzed it, I would guess E
No,
or D.
I think
No?
it's a C to a D. Most
Really?
likely a C, yeah.
Okay,
So volume.
that makes sense.
Just because the peak is so sharp.
Yeah.
And again, we look at, I think it's a 15-minute, or the hour, but you take the sharpest 15 minutes, extrapolate, and it really is pretty defined. So it's somewhere, it's maybe a D, but it's pretty good.
And that does sometimes translate to two cycles, two light cycles. And that's okay. It's a little delayed, but it's okay.
You said something, what safety correlates to what in terms of?
Speeds. So when you have like a LOS A, B, or C, you have more free flow, and you have that the chart that I love that shows every 5 miles per hour and the effect on how likely you are to survive a collision with a car. And so when you're at A, B, and C, you're making those little jumps in speed.
And also to get to an A, B, or C, you're adding more lanes. So, we've seen this before, right? Among the serious injuries, there's a disproportionate amount of those involve people that are on foot or on bicycles. So now you're adding more lanes. That's the longer travel distances they're going to cross. And then we also see that bikes adjacent to multiple lanes of traffic, that's where we see these accidents occur. So oftentimes to get to an A, B, and C with higher speeds, you're just widening the road beyond what's necessary, or having too many principal arterials, or, kind of so on and so forth.
I cross a Maple Avenue at least twice a week just to watch the drivers lock them up.
Okay. So in terms of what we're seeing currently on Western, B, C, D, some of our signals that do a little bit more work are kind of already operating at a D, which means just, 2 light cycles, sometimes 3 for 15 minutes a day. What we also don't see in the city, which I didn't really mention, is we don't see a lot of peak spreading yet. So in bigger cities, as cities are unable to continue to build out lanes, you see people pushing those discretionary trips out further from 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. or adjusting their work schedules. And we're not seeing that yet in our traffic counts. I think we will probably in the next 10, 20 years, but currently there is still room for people to push their trips out. The caveat being the fruit industry that gets out at 3 p.m. When you have those major shift changes, we see these like cool little spikes in our traffic that you don't see in other cities because all the warehouses get out at the same time.
Especially off-peak hour too.
Yeah.
Like that or the hospital you see.
Which is good, so it's not as detrimental to
Right.
us. And also currently, this is a illustration of what our comp plan update is proposing for vehicle level of service. The existing comp plan calls for a level of service of D for most of the city, and then a average of a level of service E for the urban center. So the main difference here is we're keeping D for the suburban areas, which is the green area, kind of west of Western, half of the communities east of Western. For the yellow area, which is, we're calling the urban area, we're proposing to, or the current comp plan proposes to switch it to LOSE. What we find and what we found in kind of development that's come in over the past couple of years is this is now, and certainly moving forward with infill will be helpful to attain that infill, especially with higher density developments that have those like multifamily units that we're looking for as a city. And it's not East Wenatchee. You can see East Wenatchee in this too, because this graphic we prepared it in conjunction with the Chelan Douglas Transportation Council. East Wenatchee, Chelan County, and Douglas County kind of went through this effort together so that there's like some consistency across the agencies. And both East Wenatchee and us kind of identified a need to make it a little bit easier for infill to happen. This, the way that the urban center is, it's currently an average of an E. We're proposing to keep it that way. And that's basically a lot of cities, not necessarily our size, but around our size, have completely abandoned an LOS standard for their urban core. And we thought about it. We tried to get there. We don't think we're ready yet. But this average is a nice way to ensure that it is possible to get from north to south at peak hour. You just might not be able to take Mission Street like you want to. You might have to go over a couple of blocks. That's the idea behind their traffic engineers analyzing the grid instead of just one street.
Right. There's alternate routes you can take within that downtown area if one block is choked up. Ideally, with an average of all the intersections across that core, there is available routes that are not failing yet. So.
Okay, so the next two types of level of service are a new part of the comp plan. This was the recent legislation that came from Olympia, requires all agencies, not all agencies, agencies of our size, to have a threshold for a level of service for bicycles and pedestrians as well. And this isn't new to us. We've been a complete street city since 2016. We have been planning for bikes and pedestrians for a long time, and including bicycle facilities for a long time. The difference is that now it's measurable, and the benefit to that is it's just more consistent to developers and to our group when we're reviewing. And so there are different levels. The way that you quantify the level of service for bicycles, it's called a level of traffic stress. That's what LTS is. And the idea is that there's 4 different levels of traffic stress that you can feel when you're riding your bike on a road. One tends to be your younger riders and your families and your kiddos. Level of traffic stress 4 is going to be your daily commuters and people that cycle to work every day and are very comfortable on the street.
And a speed helmet.
And the speed helmet
Like Travis, you know,
like
Just
Travis,
the full spandex
Steve.
there.
Stephen Neuenschwander as well. These are the people that they're not going to ride on the Confluence Loop Trail anyway. You know what I mean? So the way, this is a before, after, another before, after. The picture on the left is the way that historically we've kind of planned for bikes or looked at our bike routes. There's a lot of different colors. There were a bunch of different categories. And it was context sensitive, but it was different. On the right is how we're proposing to look at them. Everything in purple is identified as a bike route. The dark purple is a primary bike route. Light purple is called a secondary bike route. And the way that we intend to look at it is on primary bike routes, we would propose a level of traffic stress 2 or 3, depending on whether it was a principal or minor arterial or a collector or a local street. So this is kind of, when I said we were looking at our functional classifications updates through this lens, this is where that plays in. It's like, it's iterative and we're kind of going back and forth and adjusting to make sure it works. So essentially on these darker purple streets, the idea is that you would have a bike lane or a separated bike lane. The way that this is calculated in terms of what the level of traffic stress is actually, there's an algorithm to it, it's mathematical, it takes into account what the speed limit is and what the traffic volumes are on the street, so it's not like everything in dark purple is gonna have a non-separated bike lane. There's some nuance that goes into it. This picture is just kind of to show what that looks like.
It's a function of the speed and the volume. But as we looked at setting these level of traffic stress values with our arterials and collectors, one of the things we did was we kind of looked at the existing, or where our functionally classified arterials and collectors will be and what the existing curb width was to make sure that what we set here was kind of forward compatible with those curves. We're not committing that we're gonna go widen all the curb lines out, you know, an extra 10 feet. But ultimately, this would fit on most of the existing roadway. I mean, obviously, add some impact, and I guess I can probably talk about that. I think Stephen kind of alluded to it. Along with the state mandate of kind of relaxing these on-street parking requirements, we also have this mandate to provide a multimodal level of service, which means accommodating for the bicycles and pedestrians. And this is also something we've heard through the outreach that people really want this facility. So this is one of these big challenges that we see, is there's going to be a competition for the same pavement, right? So if you're building a complex along a collector and you don't have parking, it's very likely there's not going to be on-street parking. I think there's a slide on the next page that kind of shows, you know, we look for opportunities where we can kind of provide a hybrid, safe, level of traffic stress here. So this was, we actually did this as part of the Complete Streets policy when we repaved Cherry Street. Cherry Street was identified in the bike plan as actual bike lanes, but we were able to put in a buffered bike lane on one side and retain parking on half of the street. And so that's something we can, you know, with some spot locations on Western, this is something we can do going forward, but I think, you know, we will start seeing more impacts and loss of available on-street parking on these functionally classified routes by meeting these bike standards. And so that's something we do foresee being an issue going forward, you know, and we're all gonna have to plan for that. So.
And I think this is an example of where that we're gonna see this come to fruition is Washington Street. Washington Street is slated for bike lanes. There's a school there. There's hopefully gonna be multifamily on that big empty lot someday. There's currently underutilized parking on both sides of the street. In a perfect world, it would go down to one side of the street or completely go away. I will tell you, when Jake and I were looking at this, I had to go in Google Maps for a while to actually capture parked cars on Cherry Street, because that parking is also underutilized. But there's a conversation to be had around what the duty of the city is to provide on-street parking. And we've been talking with the planning department about what our bike map looks like to ensure that we're not completely taking that away. That's, for example, a lot of the routes that are classified as bike routes, they omit the non-classified roads, and the idea would be that parking would be available on those roads. So that's one strategy we're thinking about to mitigate that, but it's kind of why we're undergoing this effort together and not in silos.
Yeah, and along with the trade-off that Steven mentioned, that, you know, now, if you live on the residential road, maybe you can't park in front of your house because someone off of Cherry is not parking in front of your house. So-
Right. So similar to bicycles, the level of service for pedestrian is based on comfort while you're on the facility. Level of traffic stress 1 is the easiest, most buffered, and ideally, the kids and most vulnerable users could use a facility with level of traffic stress 1. Level of traffic stress 4, I'm not sure, I don't know what the demographic difference would be, but it's just someone who won't wander into the road on accident, I suppose. Similar to bicycle facilities, we looked at pedestrian routes in the city. One of the loudest feedback we have gotten from the outreach is that people want sidewalks and they want pedestrian facilities and they want to feel safe. And so even though it might seem kind of silly to have and push for pedestrian facilities on some of these roads, it's certainly like one of the most clear feedback we've gotten about our transportation network. And so the ideal is to have an LTS2 for crosswalks throughout the city. And that just means you have enough features and bells and whistles and delineation at the crosswalk to ensure that the LTS2 is felt. And then LTS3 for pedestrians on principal and minor arterials. And then for secondary routes, same thing, LTS3 on all streets and then LTS2 for crosswalks.
Yeah, and again, just talking a little bit of trade-offs. As we enhance, the walkability of the streets, we're going to start seeing more things like buffer strips, more pavement markings, things that, it's going back to the preservation. There's more things that we are going to have to maintain that do come at a cost. You know, these enhanced crosswalks, now you have maybe speed feedback signs, lighted flashing beacons, we have striping. So it's just, it'll continue to build planter strips, things like that, so.
So in terms of implementing this and moving forward, this is a snapshot of the prioritized project list that our consultant is proposing. They're still fine tuning it, and it will be published in the draft of the environmental impact statement and the draft of the comp plan element once it's completed. We, as staff, the plan itself will also identify next steps and action items for the city, including developing comprehensive funding strategies to go after this stuff, updating our codes to match the new MMLOS requirements, updating our development standards to ensure that they're provided for, and then also any associated city ordinances. And just to kind of hammer back in, the biggest challenge that we have been mindful of and cognizant of throughout this process is balancing the conflicting priorities between mobility and safety, because they are in opposition quite frequently. High levels of vehicle mobility is kind of conflicts with more density and growth and infill. And then pedestrian amenities also can conflict with that, because sometimes strategies around allowing more ADUs and lifting those requirements could be lifting the requirement for frontage improvements, when it is a little bit counterintuitive, because you're putting in more density and more people that might need those facilities in order to get around and that don't necessarily have a car. And then the conflict between bike amenities and on-street parking. As far as funding goes, we have a lot of grant programs that fund safety, and we've historically been pretty successful at obtaining that. Not as many grant programs that fund preservation or mobility. Statewide, our mobility needs don't always pencil out. A lot of our mobility needs are geared towards future growth and trying to set us up for like growth in the foothills and stuff like that.
And just, quick shot on the grant programs. I think what we've seen is cost of our projects, and just like everything, it's about double in the last several years. Just the construction cost index has gone up. These grant programs and the amount available to us has stayed about pretty level. I know that with the recent tax increases at the state level, some of the traditional programs that we go, like the gas tax, they didn't receive any portion of those increases. So their allotment is still, it kind of remains stagnant. So just another, the types of projects we even put in for, we're having to kind of limit the scope of what we put in because they just won't fund them, the cost of those. So we're starting to see we'll do the safety improvements, but none of the preservation that's with it, things like that, so.
So that's the end of our presentation. We're happy to entertain questions, or we can wait until after Jessica goes as well, for comments.
A couple real quick ones, because
Yep.
I don't know if I'll get you back up here. Who designed the new bike route signs?
That was, that was done as part of that regional bike plan. When the regional bike plan was put together, all the agencies adopted it. We did not adopt that signing, but that was as an opportunity. We actually had the opportunity, so we, on Confluence Parkway, we designed it, had the template, and then it would just happen to fall last year that we were replacing all the bike route signs, so we threw it out there, and the cost was the same. So we replaced all of them. It was just
They're great.
perfect timing.
Yeah, very
Okay.
nice.
The
They're
intention.
fun. They're wonderful. Thank
One,
you.
one of the things I've gotten a lot of comment on is hey, what's with all the new bike routes? And it's those all went in the existing locations.
Right.
Everyone, there's not a single new location that went in.
I
So,
think, and we've heard from East Wenatchee, we kind of were the first ones to pull the trigger. Next time they have to do their citywide update, they're gonna adopt the new ones as well. So it'll be cohesive between the cities.
Well, I like them.
Great.
My bias will come through on this one, but in front of the medical facility at Ninth and Chelan, the traffic signal was modified to allow pedestrian crossing with a delay of the cars, for obviously pedestrian safety being a factor. How difficult was that to install? Did that require a huge cost for the city? Was it reimbursed by the
no, that was,
employer?
I mean, we didn't really, there's no new equipment. It was just adding a leading pedestrian interval phase. So basically giving it several seconds before of all red. That's the first one we've done in the city. We've since done one at
John Newberry.
at John Newberry right there on Western to kind of help kids get out in the crosswalk a little bit. Yeah, that made it, we've seen a big reduction. There's quite a few pedestrians getting struck in that crosswalk. Unfortunately, we're still seeing it happen, which is why we have a project plan there next year to do, it's gonna become a 3-lane section there to kind of help
Yeah.
with those turns.
Well,
But yeah.
we know the employer has a large off-street parking issue, so, and off-campus for that matter. But I was looking at other locations just in my own walking around, and I'm like, this is ideal.
Yeah.
If and when that kind of modification becomes an option for us.
Yeah. Yeah, the leading Petterville has made a huge change and really hasn't made any detriment to or impact on the traffic through that signal, so.
Thank you.
Back to Emma. What was the first project you worked on with the city?
The First Street Bikeway Corridor,
The traffic circles.
The traffic calming circles.
Traffic calming circles,
They're not
yes.
Best project you've ever worked on. If anybody has problems with that, I'd love to talk to them about it.
Thank you, Travis.
We need 100 more of those.
On First Street?
That First Street one, yeah, I love that project. So on a quick side note, it's fun for me to see that first meeting that I had with you, to see you take on a project for this. So good job, thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jessica Shaw, here to talk about our utilities. So these pictures kind of represent from the public perspective what they think of utilities, but there's a lot more to it. And usually they forget about us until there's no water when they turn the faucet on and their toilet backs up and it's raining and they can't get where they're going, right? So a lot of our things are hidden, but some of our biggest challenges is very similar to what you've heard from others tonight. It's aging infrastructure, it's capacity, and it's the cost of things. So no surprises there. So I'm just gonna run really quickly through all 4 of our utilities. We kind of break out regional as its own utility because it's its own funding, and we have a partnership with the PUD in East Wenatchee. But as you'll see tonight, all three of those things I talked about earlier, aging infrastructure, capacity, and cost, is affecting all of our utilities. So right now, we only have one source of drinking water. That's the East Bank Aquifer. That's a pretty cool picture of when we dredged and dug a hole across the river. Probably never able to do that again, but there we are. So we have one transmission main, one source. And so just over the last 2 years, you can see in 25, we had pump 1 fail, pump 2 failed in fall of 24. Thankfully, as of today, I'm happy to say both those pumps are operating at a much greater capacity than the old pump. So sleep better tonight, right? And then pump 3 and 4, we're really working on being more proactive and good stewards of our utilities. And so we already have started work on replacing pump 3 and have plans to replace pump 4 in the next 2 to 3 years. The graph in the corner, though, shows you that by 2036, we'll essentially be at capacity at our East Bank Aquifer, which means we need to do a lot of work to be able to accommodate growth in our community. And it's not just our growth, it's growth in East Wenatchee, growth in Chelan PUD, and so it's kind of a even bigger issue. And as we've seen, usually we've always thought that our growth projections were pretty conservative, but that's because we didn't take into account the impact of middle housing. So unfortunately, our planning efforts were done kind of out of sync with some of the comp planning efforts in the past, and regulations have changed at the state level. I'm super excited about the efforts that the planning department is doing and our collaborative efforts. So I just feel like we're doing a better job of planning and coordinating efforts, and it's really exciting to be part of the process. So some of the upcoming current projects that I'm working on, we are planning on developing a new well field in Douglas County. We're also planning on developing a new source, which will likely be a surface water treatment plant. You can see on the right, it's basically a giant life straw factory to filter all the water. And there's a map of the service area that we currently are providing water for. It goes clear out to Monitor, way out to, from Baker Flats, clear out to the airport, and then all the way up Forest Ridge. So quite a large area that regional water provides water for, all areas that are growing, right? So that's regional. I love this little diagram in the top because this shows you that even though you have this nice surface, and we always, we think about we call it the frosting. This is our cake analogy in the utility. We're the hidden cake under the road that when it goes wrong, everybody notices, right? But yet we have all this infrastructure under the ground. And this map is from our last water comp plan from 2018. And everything in red is now another 10 years older than what's showing here. So everything in red is now about 82 to 102 years old. And so as you can see, more than 50% of our water mains are past their service life, because usually it's 50 to 100 years depending on the material. We'll tell you how long it lasts. And if you guys remember, December was a pretty rough month for us, and we continue to see increasing leakage. My focus with projects is really, we'll get to the projects. We also have, this is a great picture from December. In December, we had multiple leaks, several serious ones like this one in front of Lifeline. And my biggest concern with these leaks that are downtown is we're impacting businesses. So it's even a greater cost because we're having to ask businesses to close while we repair things. Our crew did an amazing job, but we're not always able to get things repaired that quickly. And it's also a bit heartbreaking when we flood businesses, right? Because now they pretty much have to shift to recovery, and it gets tough. So some of the projects that we're working on now, we've really focused in on what are the key things that our community needs to continue moving forward, and what is most likely to fail next. Now, we do have to make a bit of guesses, but we're looking at data like how many times have we had to go out and fix that main, and what are the impacts if it totally fails. And so that's why we have the Crawford water main. That one's on our list because Crawford serves the hospital. It's very old. It goes under the canal. It's mostly repair bans up to the canal. And so we felt like if that main failed, it's going to have a huge impact on our community. Of course, the Okanagan Reservoir, you're familiar, that failed last fall. We're working on doing some temporary repairs, but are hoping to move forward with continuing to replace that, because without that Okanagan Reservoir, we're really hamstrung with growth. We won't have enough storage for fire protection and to supply water for adding more housing. The Pershing water main is a bit of like an efficiency That's one of our first one dig projects where we're gonna be making repairs to all of our utilities in the road under one project. And so we got over $2 million in grant funding for that, so we're pretty excited that that's a really good effort, not only with the efficiency, but being able to access grant funding to leverage that. So those are the projects that are currently happening. We're also working on updating our comprehensive plans to match with community development's projections for growth. And then some other projects that are also forthcoming. Roosevelt is again another one dig project where we're looking at replacing all the utilities. We also have lead pipe in that area, as well as flooding and very old utilities, 80 to 100 years old. But then you'll see as moving forward, we're really focusing on key areas of the city that are more in our commercial district, our oldest part of town for all of our utilities, and places where development is really hamstrung because they can't, it's very expensive, right? All the utilities are in the middle of the road under lots of concrete, and it's very difficult to access them. It's also areas where, especially like on Fifth Street, if we were to have problems in that area, we already have some problems like flooding and surcharging during rain events of the sewer system. But if that water main in there is over 100 years old, and that's also the main pipe for our whole distribution system. So our focus is really on like, okay, what are the things that if this goes down, the whole city will be out of water, right? So really looking and focusing on the big things. And hopefully you've seen our Fix a Leak Week that's kind of helping people understand like the importance of not only our infrastructure in the road, all the pipes, but also our storage tanks. So for sewer collections, as you may recall, again, we're seeing some infrastructure fails. Man, that pipe in Old Station, our force main, you can see the area that it served, that we pretty much had to ask people to please don't flush or limit your discharges as much as possible. We got that fixed. Another amazing job by our crews and help from lots of partners, Douglas County, Chelan County, PUD, everybody that jumped in to help with that. But again, you see what it does to our roads. We end up blowing up over half the road, and that pipe actually wasn't that old. It was from the 90s. So just an unfortunate thing. But again, we have a lot of old infrastructure. I love this picture of the 115-year-old cobblestone manhole. This is actually the manhole on Kittitas Street that the Majestic tied into. So, and you can see in the other picture what a newer manhole from the 90s looks like. It's concrete structure sticking out of the ground there. So current projects with our sewer collections, big shout out to our collections crew. They are doing pipelining projects and they're doing more small works projects. And essentially that is in the upper corner there, the purple, it's like putting a brand new pipe in there without losing the capacity. And not only are we able to do that really affordably because we don't have to dig up the whole road, it's just helping to buy years on those 100-year-old pipes. And preventing sewer backups, because when the pipes start to collapse and fail, that's when it causes backups and it backs up into people's homes. We're also working on a Euclid sewer main project. That's really important for one of the CHIP grants we got to extend sewer up Easy Street. When the PUD built the Old Station sewer system, they were only thinking of Old Station, unfortunately. So some of the things we've learned through planning efforts over the last several years is that we have a lot of pipes that aren't going to be able to support all the development in Sunny Slope. So Euclid sewer is one of the most imminent ones that we need to get done to be able to take on all the new growth happening on Easy Street. We're also working on some sewer comprehensive planning to better identify where are those areas and just continue to try and balance, like, how do we accommodate growth, but then how do we also make sure we're taking care of that aging infrastructure for all of our existing customers. Upcoming projects, again, we're really working on, you'll notice these are all the same projects that were in the water, and that's because we're also working hard on trying to be really efficient with those utility dollars across all of the utilities. So it's a work in progress. So onto our wastewater treatment plant. So the digester with the brown chocolate fountain running down the side, as Mike likes to call it. That one was born in 1951. It's essentially obviously having some aging issues, and we did get it fixed. And there is the other photo of our brand new digester 4, which came online in 2025. Unfortunately, during current facilities planning, we learned that that new digester, in fact, all of our digesters, we reached capacity last summer. So that's why we're working really hard on this next phase of digester improvements to be able to expand the capacity of our solids handling. So in the nick of time, did we get that fourth digester?
Oh, live action,
Oh, did you want to see that?
live action, wow.
Oops, come on. Oh, well, I can send it to you. It's really great. Just imagine a chocolate fountain, but it's not chocolate. So wastewater treatment plant projects. On the right is our wastewater treatment plant. We actually have property on both sides of the street. So our current projects, as you know from last council meeting, we're building a new admin building. We are also adding a fertilizer storage building, which is super exciting because we're going to, with that project, transition from having to pay to get rid of our biosolids to having people pay us. So that's just part of some of our industrial symbiosis efforts to increase the efficiency of our utilities, which I hope someday will just continue to pay off and help control some of the cost
Can
increases.
council be first customers?
Yeah, of course. How much do you want?
Do we
Just first customers.
decide on a
We
name?
usually produce about 600 tons, so let me
When
know
you're
how
selling
much we
it,
can.
when you're selling it, it's gonna be
Okay.
first customer.
All right, no problem. We still need to work on a name for our project, so don't worry, we'll be back. We just need to build the storage building first. Some of our failing equipment at the plant is our primary clarifier mechanism. It's leaning, it should be straight up. We have it held up with ratchet straps right now, but it's hanging in there, but we have all the parts. We're just trying to get time to get that going. Also, the south viewing area, hopefully you've noticed, it's a little bit prettier down there, and don't worry, it'll get prettier as we go along. That actually is some of the final repairs for the primary effluent line break that we had a couple of years ago. So finally getting things put back together. And then, as I mentioned, the solids handling improvements that will help us get more capacity in the solids portion. And we're also working really hard on the facilities planning. So it's just really good time to be doing this planning in concurrence with the overall city comp plan, because we're able to incorporate, like, how are we gonna get all this capacity taken care of. Future projects are kind of a combination, again, of old aging infrastructure. Our UV disinfection system, is obsolete, and so if we need parts, we have to go on eBay or other places to try and patch it together till we get it fixed. So that's probably one of the next projects after the solids handling project. And then the big one after that is really the secondary treatment upgrades. And this is the part of the plant where we remove all the dissolved materials and make it nice and clean before it goes back out to the river. And right now, we are at about 85% capacity. Which means, so other people talks about level of service for the utility, for other things that we have some choices. In the utilities, we don't have a lot of choices. Our level of service is dictated by the state through our operating permits. And they tell us when you get to 85%, you need to start planning on how to grow and increase capacity. So I will be back to talk to you hopefully in the next couple months about some of our alternatives for expanding our secondary treatment process. I just wanted to note, though, how much room we have available for expanding the wastewater treatment plant. So just be prepared for some fun conversations about what our options are going to be for the future. Also, we have some grit removal improvements and digester 2. It was another old digester from the 50s that the lid is had some issues over the years and is due to be replaced as well. So again, balancing supporting growth, but also dealing with some aging infrastructure. We like to say we always are shuffling deck to figure out what's the next most important thing to be working on based on where we're at and where we're going. And stormwater, as you may remember, the pipe, inside the pipe there that was pretty ratty and broken down, that was our emergency repair at 5th Street from Emerson to Chelan. That stormwater pipe, a lot of it's from the 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s. It just hasn't lasted in our soil. So a lot of it is this corrugated metal pipe. And you can see the black part, that's the asphalt lining, but once that gets ripped out, this pipe, it just eats it up very quickly. And then the picture in the middle is out there on Miller Street. Our stormwater system was really designed for like a Seattle rain event, nice and slow, all day long, 24 hours. which isn't bad. It keeps our facilities from being too big. But what we've seen lately trending is that these rain events are more intense and on a shorter period of time. And so our infrastructure just can't keep up with it. So one of the things we've been doing, this is our 9th Street project. It actually won 2 awards this year, won a national award from StormCon for its innovation and environmental impact. And then it also got an award this year from the Association of Civil Engineering Companies as one of the outstanding projects for its innovation and creativity. So this project is super cool. We built this huge underground infiltration structure because we had huge capacity issues on 9th Street, but we didn't want to do the whole pipe down 9th Street to make it bigger. So we did this bypass and put it in the college, or the college's lower parking lot, which was really ugly looking, and now they have a nice new parking lot there. And now we're infiltrating some of the water, which helps reduce the impacts and also allowed us to add stormwater infrastructure to the Ringgold and 7th area where we had frequent flooding issues. So this was a huge win in many respects and a great solution. A lot of times the solution for stormwater capacity is huge, expensive projects in the road, or you have to take out houses to build ponds, which is kind of contrary to where we're trying to increase housing, right? So using the parking lot in that way was a big win and a great partnership with the college. It was also 85% funded with grants from Ecology, so that for us was huge as well. A great big project, mostly grant funded. The one thing I do want to mention about stormwater, though, that again, all the utilities are highly regulated. We do have new regulations, I think, as we've talked a bit, and Kelsey shared with you, that are coming down starting in 2027. And it is going to increase the cost, especially the cost for developing smaller, there'll be ADUs, multifamily, smaller multifamily duplexes that'll be impacted and have to provide on-site infiltration, water quality. And so what used to be an acre is now down to 5,000 square feet of new or replaced hard surfaces. So that means the roof, it's not just the pollutant generating, it's all the surfaces. So I'm not sure how we address that other than try and figure out some creative ways to help development meet those new requirements. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
It's just interesting, we have all these state requirements, and there's CHIP program. I know somebody here actually benefited from the CHIP program
Yay.
to help us, but there's very little financial help we have to take the whole responsibility.
Yeah.
And so you guys are stuck to figure out, how are we supposed to figure this out, right? And somehow you have to say, we are trying, because we're mandated to come up with a plan to try, but it's not realistic. It's like one department doesn't know what the other department over there is doing.
Yeah,
So we
that's very
say
true.
less parking, for example, but yet we gotta have more bike lanes. How's this gonna work out? So I am glad I am not on the city council that has to help with direction to the staff of what direction to go. So that's my statement.
Just know we're working really hard to try and balance all the things that people want, but it's tough. It is definitely tough. I also wanted to share, I think the CHIP program is an amazing opportunity. I'm so excited the city was able to get so much money. And because for utility fees, we do have waivers in the code, but those waivers have to be backfilled by either CHIP or general fund money. So when we waive those utility fees, by state law, we're not allowed to just take utility dollars and waive fees. So the CHIP program's amazing because it's like getting a grant to pay for all those things, so that they don't have to come out of the general fund or the utility funds, especially for all the new infrastructure, both in public right of way and on private property. So pretty cool program.
I'll tag on to what the mayor said. It's a little counterintuitive, and I would even go as far as almost insanity of requiring affordable housing, but increasing every requirement under the sun to push against affordable housing.
Yeah.
So they don't know what they're doing. It's unfunded. It's just about insanity.
Yeah.
So you guys are doing a great job. I appreciate how you approach everything, so thanks.
Yeah, we're trying and really appreciate your support. And yeah, you're right. It is tough. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing necessarily at the state level, so.
Are you, it's different than when Stephen was up here. Are you, like, it looked like, Stephen, we need some guidance, direction. On yours, do you just kind of base it on that direction is how you're going to come back to us, say, well, if you guys are looking at this, then we got to kind of go that way? Because you're not really looking for, you're just going to, like, kind of take what Stephen has. I'm trying to see what our
Yeah.
next steps are.
Yes,
And maybe this is
yeah.
an opportunity for Stephen to step back up here, and Jake, and we can ask some more questions, maybe.
Yeah, that's fine, because yeah, I think that's one of the things, been working with Stephen a lot on is like, do we pick the areas where the infrastructure is most robust and say, this is where we want to really incentivize development because there's less infrastructure needs in this area. Some of the tough challenges with that, though, is the treatment plant capacity. The treatment plant serves everybody, and so it doesn't matter where you decide to develop, we have to make sure we have capacity at that treatment plant. For other utilities, regional's the same way, right? Regional serves this whole large group, and so we really do need to keep moving forward on capacity projects for regional. But I think there is more areas where we've made great progress in our collection system and the stormwater system that we could say, you know what, this is a more robust system in this area. And yeah, it would be, there's less like capacity concerns or less aging infrastructure concerns in some areas, so.
Stephen, maybe, do you feel like you have enough input to kind of go from here, or, and then I guess my suggestions for the city council, because you guys are going to have some questions. I don't want them just to go to the staff, they're scrambling as it is, so I guess we're going to ask, because they're probably going to be similar questions, and then we'll put them together so they don't get overwhelmed. So maybe they can go to Tammy, and I'll send you guys that email just to make sure, and then that way, I don't want you to bombard the staff. They're scrambling as it is, because this has to be completed by, it'll come back to you probably, I know there's other dates, but they have to have this completed by December this year. So I think we'll send, Tammy will send you an email, says, hey, you got questions, so we kind of compile them to everybody and kind of meet with them individually. But I want to make sure you feel like you got direction, or if the city council right now has more questions for you that you feel like, okay, you got something to start working on. You've already been working on it forever, but we're to keep going with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got some good direction on some of the things that as a council, you're interested in, things that we can certainly go back to Burke on and our consultants and take a look at. But what I want to make sure that we all understand is this: the sky is not falling, right? We don't have to have all of these problems solved by December of 2026, right? This is a 20-year plan, and so we have to think about them now, and we have to develop our goals and our policies and our approaches. But some of these are multi-year problems that we need to look at and solve, and so. That I think is maybe the most important thing is this is a 20-year plan, and not everything's going to happen in the next 5 years, 10 years. Some of these things are 15 years out, but that doesn't mean we don't need to be thinking about them right now. We may not have the solutions today, but through your direction, that gives us the goals, the policies, the action items to further study. For example, let's take the back to some of the housing recommendations, right? A minimum density, right? Maybe we don't have that, we don't know what that looks like today, but that may be a direction from the council of, we want the planning commission to continue to work with the community development department and the other city departments on what might a minimum density look like. And that then puts that into our work program. That gives us time to work with the planning commission, with consultants, look at what other jurisdictions do, and then that comes in that's something that we would phase in or bring back to you as a city council and say, okay, here's what we learned, here's what the planning commission's recommendation is, and and then that's an opportunity for the council to make final decisions on that. So I think it's really important to remember that we don't have all the solutions today. Some of those are going to come over a couple of year period. And some of it may come as we phase things in. For example, some of these parking requirements, maybe we start in our commercial zones. and give our residential areas a couple of years to think about, what do we do about parking that may spill into the local access streets? Give us a chance to think about our multimodal level of service, and what is our plan moving forward? So we could phase those state requirements in over a couple of year period, to give us some time to study and understand that and put together a plan to move forward.
And I think it's important too to also note that you're going to be given more chances to look at this. So don't feel like you have to have solutions tonight, or all your questions tonight. We want to, through this process, we've wanted to keep you engaged and informed, to let you know the things that we're struggling with as staff and the challenges, and how interrelated everything is, and potential options, so that you can be thinking about them and asking questions. And our environmental impact statement, which evaluates alternatives for this planning process, will be going out as a draft in May, and we'll be having an open house in May that we hope that you attend and ask questions and learn more. And then our intent is to come back before you in a workshop this summer, so that you can you'll have had more time to look at drafts, concerns, comments, formulate those, and give us more direction, give the Planning Commission direction that then they can take in and formalize a recommendation through their public process and their hearing for you to consider this fall. So there's more time, there's more opportunities, but we really wanted to engage you and appreciate this opportunity to talk with you about these, where we're at today.
With regional water, it would occur to me that there's at least 3 comp plans that address the regional as their primary water supply.
Good question. So there really is only one regional comp plan, and it's developed cooperatively with the other 2 water purveyors, but it is managed by the city. The city is we're co-owner, but we're the primary operator and manager of the facility. So it's kind of interesting. We have 2 volumes of our water comp plan. One is our distribution system and infrastructure, and the other is our regional water.
Okay, so it stands on its own.
It does stand on its own.
It can
yeah.
be used as a leverage, if you will, for grants and ultimately for,
Only for regional projects, because the pot of money is essentially based on, the city, we sell the water and we agree on the rate between all 3 parties, and all 3 parties pay the same rate, so we're all putting money into the same bucket. So essentially that bucket of money is its own utility fund that belongs to the regional partners equally.
but potentially a planning agency like Chelan County at the courthouse, our own East Wenatchee and Douglas County over 19th Street, would all be looking at development
Correct.
that needs regional water.
Yep, so when we do the regional plan, we all collectively agree on the service area, and then as they do their own planning for their own systems, they feed that data back to the city. So right now, the PUD is beginning their planning effort, East Wenatchee is just wrapping up their planning effort for growth, and we're gonna start ours, and it's kinda good that we're going third, because then we wrap up all the stuff that they've done into our plan, along with our projections for growth.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Anything else for staff tonight?
Well, thank you. That was,
Yeah.
I like that. There's a lot of,
I just have 2 brief points.
Oh,
One,
yes.
I just want to acknowledge Glenn and his team through this effort. It's been very collaborative between community development and public works. That's not how every agency operates. So again, just really appreciate the teamwork on this. There's been no silos in developing this comp plan. And 2, I just want to acknowledge public works staff, in particular Jessica and Emma and Jake providing his expertise. This is a big lift, and it's been taking a lot of time to work on this. And everyone, as Mayor Poyer indicated, we're all very busy as it is, especially Jessica and Emma. So I just want to acknowledge their efforts.
Thank you all.
I guess we're done with our work session.